You ever look in the mirror and just wonder, how did I end up with my mother's eyes, but I don't know, my father's terrible sense of humor? It's probably one of the most basic questions we ask about ourselves. Well, today we are going to unlock that very puzzle. We're going to dive deep into the science of heredity and figure out why you are this amazing, unique combination of everyone who came before you. So here's the game plan. We're going to start with the big picture. What are heredity and variation? Then we'll actually travel back in time to meet a monk whose little garden experiments basically cracked the code. From there, we'll zoom way into the molecular level to look at the blueprint itself. And then finally, we'll see why all this genetic shuffling is so important for survival. I mean, this is it, right? This is the central mystery. It's not just a random lottery. There are actual rules, there are patterns, and there's this incredible biological machine at work that decides how these traits get passed on, creating a person who is, at the same time, a perfect blend of their parents and someone completely new. Okay, so let's get into part one, the puzzle of you. This is all about getting a handle on the two big forces at play here, the one that makes us look like our parents and the one that makes every single one of us totally unique. First up, you've got heredity. To put it simply, this is just the passing down of information. It's the reason that humans have human babies, right? And cats have kittens. It makes sure that the basic instructions for a species get passed along generation after generation. But if heredity was the only thing going on, we'd all be clones. And that's where variation comes in. This is the secret sauce. It's the engine of diversity. It's all the differences, big and small, that make sure no two people, unless they're identical twins, are ever exactly the same. And this chart really nails the difference. Look at asexual reproduction with just one parent. You get fields of sugarcane where every plant is almost identical. Variation is, well, it's slow. But with sexual reproduction, you're combining genetic material from two different parents. You're shuffling the deck every single time, which creates this incredible diversity we see in humans. It's a total variation powerhouse. So how exactly are these traits passed down? I mean, what are the rules? For that, we need to meet the man who first figured it all out. Let's jump into our second section and see how a 19th century monk in his garden totally cracked the code of inheritance. This is Gregor Mendel. Now, people before him knew that traits were inherited, obviously. But Mendel did something that no one had thought to do before. He counted. He applied math to biology, and by meticulously tracking thousands and thousands of pea plants, he started to see these predictable patterns that had been hiding in plain sight. Okay, so let's walk through his big experiment. He started by crossing a pure tall plant with a pure short one. And the results, every single one of the kids, the offspring, was tall. The short trait, it just seemed to disappear completely. But then, and this is the cool part, he let those tall plants pollinate themselves, and in the next generation, bam, the short trait was back. And it didn't just come back randomly. No way. It came back in this stunningly consistent ratio. For every one short plant, there were almost exactly 3 tall plants, a 3-to-1 ratio. This was the big clue. It meant that inheritance wasn't just some fuzzy blending of traits. It was a system governed by clear, predictable rules. So to explain this, Mendel came up with this brilliant idea of dominant and recessive traits. The dominant trait, like tallness, is the one that always shows up, even if you only have one copy of its instruction. The recessive one, like shortness, it stays hidden unless you get 2 copies of its instruction. He even used letters to keep track. A big T for dominant tall, and a little t for recessive short. And this is where it all clicks into place. See, each plant has 2 copies of the height instruction. We call these different versions, like tall or short, alleles. So a plant could be big T, or little t, little t. But it could also be big T, little t. And because that tall T is dominant, both the TT and the TT plants end up looking tall. The only way to be short is to have the TT combination. This is how that short trait could just disappear for a generation and then pop right back up. Mendel figured out the rules of the game, but he had absolutely no idea what the physical game pieces were. So let's move into part 3 and see how those abstract rules are actually written into the molecules inside our cells. So here's the chain of command inside your body. It all starts with DNA. That's the master blueprint. A specific chunk of that DNA is called a gene, and you can think of it like a single recipe in the blueprint cookbook.
That recipe is then used to build a protein, which is a little worker molecule that actually goes out and does a job. And the final observable result of what that protein does, that's what we call a treat.
Let's use Mendel's plants to make this real. A gene has the instructions for making a protein that produces growth hormone. If the gene's recipe makes a really good, efficient protein, the plant makes tons of hormone and grows super tall. But if the gene has a slightly different recipe, a different allele, that makes a less efficient protein, it produces less hormone and ends up short. That's it. That's the direct link from a gene all the way to a trait.
Now, all this DNA isn't just a giant, tangled mess inside our cells. It's packaged up really neatly into these structures we call chromosomes. You can think of them like volumes of an encyclopedia. And in humans, we have 23 pairs of them. For each pair, you get one volume from your mom and one from your dad.
And this is the physical reality behind Mendel's rules. The fact that we have these paired chromosomes and that we get one of each pair from each parent is exactly why we have two copies, two alleles for every gene. It's the biological machine that makes Mendel's math work so perfectly. It's amazing. This system even determines our biological sex. You see, the 23rd pair are the sex chromosomes. Females have two X chromosomes, so they're XX. Males have one X and one Y, so they're XY. And since a mother can only ever pass on an X, it's actually the father's contribution, whether he gives an X or a Y, that determines the sex of the child.
Okay, so we've seen how traits are passed down and how variation gets created. But why? Why is it so important? For our final section, let's zoom all the way out and look at why variation is the absolute key to survival. This quote really just says it all. Variation creates this whole buffet of different traits in a population. But not all traits are created equal. When the environment changes, some of those traits suddenly become way more useful than others. So the environment itself kind of selects the winners by letting those with the good traits survive and reproduce more. Imagine a colony of bacteria, right? A sudden heat wave hits, and maybe most of them die. But what if, just by random chance, a few of those bacteria have a variation that makes them a little more heat resistant? Well, they survive, and they're the ones who get to reproduce and pass on that heat-resistant trait. Over time, the whole population becomes better suited to the heat. That whole process, that's evolution in action. So what's the magic number that makes this whole thing possible? It's 2. It's the combination of genetic material from 2 parents that constantly provides the raw material, that endless shuffling of genes, that allows this powerful engine of adaptation and evolution to work. And that brings us right back to the beginning, that unique blend of traits that makes you, you. Your mom's eyes, your dad's laugh. It's not just some cute family quirk. It's a tiny snapshot of this ancient, powerful system that allows life itself to adapt, to survive, and to flourish on a planet that's always changing. You know, every single generation inherits the genetic story that was written by all the generations that came before. But because of this beautiful mechanism of variation, every new generation also gets to write a completely new chapter. The only question is, what will we write in ours?